Today's gospel reading comes from Mark chapter 1, verses 21 through 28. Jesus and his disciples went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then, there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching? With authority! He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. Here ends the reading.
Grace, mercy, and peace to you, beloved community from the triune God, source of love, connection, and ultimate hope. Amen. Earlier this week, I had a conversation with Reverend Mia Baumgartner. She is the chaplain for spiritual care at the University of Washington Medical Center. And we were having a great conversation about a book study we're going to soon lead for rostered leaders. And in the midst of the conversation, she shared that the Washington State Department of Health has identified some things that as we are ending, or we're coming to the last stages of the pandemic, what some things that people really need. And she said people are in need of connection, hope, purpose, and flexibility. I shook my head. I had her repeat that again, and I immediately took notes. Hope, connection, purpose, and flexibility. That insight, her words, just actually repeating what the Department of Health says that we all need was so true. It filled me with a sense of yes, a realization that I needed to write those down and share them with others and kind of live into them. Yesterday, I had an engaging conversation with Justus, who will be sharing some insights about what it means to be in a healing space of dwelling with people who are suffering from trauma or other pain. And he does this every day as a licensed mental health professional here in the area. And I wish I taped our conversation. It was rich and thoughtful. And I found myself at one point, I wrote down a quote from our conversation. Justus said this: "There can be no greater wave to wash over us than God." That was good. I had to repeat it into the conversation, and then I went and wrote it down. It was like a nugget of truth. What makes a sentence worthy of remembering? Who has spoken words of life or truth or hope or connection for you? As I think about it, I have too many people to count. But some of the most profound voices for me have been people who have met me in my pain or my dysfunction, disillusionment, and thankfully they did not look away. They loved me with a God-given grace that reminded me that I was not alone. I remember a very painful public moment many years ago, and a colleague said to me, "Receive the grace that you so freely give others, Kacey." And then he said, "I've been there too." I drove home and I repeated that sentence over and over. I talked to a friend and I repeated that sentence, and that sentence is still with me these days, and I have repeated it to myself within this last month. Receive the grace you so freely give others. In Mark 1:22, we hear that Jesus taught as one having authority, not like the scribes. Jesus taught as if someone would be taking notes, like grabbing some parchment and quickly writing down a sentence or repeating what he said over and over. What was it about Jesus that gave him authority? He didn't have any advanced degrees or even permission to waltz into any synagogue and just start preaching. Yet people memorized his teachings and parables and they repeated them to his friends. What gave Jesus authority? Was it like the tone of his voice, warm with confidence and comfort? Was it his speech pattern? Have you ever thought about, like, what did Jesus sound like? Was he animated and theatrical, summoning people to lean in and listen? Or did Jesus talk slowly, emphasizing each and every word as if they were priceless and sacred? We'll never know the texture or the tone of Jesus' voice or if he talked with his hands. And I think that's okay, because the authority of Jesus was deeper than charisma or vocal technique. What was it that gave Jesus authority? What made people stop and listen? Was it his brilliant mind and knowledge of scriptures? Maybe. But I'm sure there were other scribes in the synagogue who were top of their class and highly regarded in Capernaum for their religious teachings. Something about Jesus made him stand out. The scriptures say that people were astonished by his teachings. And then later, after he heals this man who is possessed by an evil force, they're again astonished. Maybe the scribes that the people were so used to listening to, well, they just quoted other teachers and they just regurgitated the right answers all the time, focusing solely on laws and getting caught up in theory, missing the lives and the lived theology unfolding right in front of them. You know, Jesus, he was different. Jesus referred to God with like a contagious intimacy. He didn't need to borrow insights from other people to describe the liberating movement of God, like it pulsed through his body and his being. I think Jesus' authority is born out of being fully human and fully God. We can easily miss the miracle of the incarnation. And when we talk about dwelling God with us, we have to pause here for a moment and remember that Jesus had like lungs and limbs, and a toenails and a pancreas and eyelids and 2 kneecaps. And Jesus had hormones and cholesterol and red blood cells. And Jesus experienced the full range of big human emotions: exhaustion, despair, disillusionment, sorrow, joy, connection, peace, endearment, and fear and pain. Nothing in Jesus was ever aloof or isolated from the human experience. And Jesus was always dwelling with people. Like before he came into the synagogue and after he has this experience, he's going to be out with people again. And when Jesus is dwelling with people, that means he's dwelling in the mess of human life. Like he knew their pain and he did not look away. He ate dinner with children of dysfunctional families, and he walked with fathers who were stuck in their grief, and he listened to stories of betrayal and mysterious illness. And when he said, "Blessed are the poor," he knew them all by name. So when Jesus was teaching, God was not some like abstract idea. Jesus didn't manipulate or coerce people to trust. No, he spoke about a good news that was actually good and meant to move people from pain to healing and sorrow to joy and despair to contentment, from disconnection to full communion with God and with others. Like every word that Jesus spoke was to yield life, even the words that were challenging. The words that were kind of sometimes would cut with a 2-edged sword were in the end to yield life. Like even from the cross, Jesus spoke the words intended to heal, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. So it's no wonder, even though we don't know what Jesus says as he's in the synagogue and everyone is amazed, there is someone, it says, that was possessed by a demon or a force that would have them yelling out. And they yell out with such disruption that they yell, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." And at this moment, Jesus doesn't ask someone to take him away or get irritated that his teaching has been interrupted. Instead, he stops and he tells this force to be quiet. And then, right there in front of everyone, he heals this man. Like that spirit that had been holding him back, that had been keeping him bound and headed toward destruction, was actually taken out. And we don't know, there's all sorts of ways that people can interpret it these days, but maybe we stop and say Jesus' words of healing matched his actions of healing. Like he created a space where this man right there could experience the love and grace and mercy of God, and he could be changed and transformed. When we talk about dwelling, it is a remembering that Jesus comes to fully dwell with us in the midst of our pain. Let me tell you, I've had enough of it, my own pain this week. And to be with us, to remind us that we are not alone, and then continue to be with us as we move toward healing. Today, we are going to have Justus come and to share a little bit about the work that he has been called to, the holy work. And I wish that we had an hour for you to hear the depth by which he is called to be with people in the midst of their pain and to bring them and to walk with them. And it is deeply holy. And so, Justus, I am so grateful for you to share your life's work, how God has called you to be about healing in the world. And so thank you so much for your time and for your willingness to share with us. So Justus, I will hand off for you to share, what does dwelling with God in the midst of suffering look like? And how do you help bring people toward healing with God's help?
Oh man. So as if we needed more words, I came up with some clever stuff. There's this evidence-based practice thing that's really hot. And what I have is more practice-based evidence. I've decided personally that evidence-based practices is guaranteed to work temporarily. But I try and do stuff. I try and help people with particular therapies like lifespan integration and emotionally focused therapy. It's helping somebody have scaffolding and something to hold on to while the healing is happening, like you were saying, Kacey, while God is with us. And I was loving what you were saying about the cross yesterday, because that horizontal part, in my experience, it represents us. Like if I'm sitting with you, it's me and you having that human experience, the compassion of sharing and dwelling together. And that's one of my first rules in therapy is we're not fixing. I'm not fixing your feelings. I'm not fixing you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your feelings. And so, it's a faith and an experience to hold that you're good at your core. And like we were talking about yesterday, I stumbled a little on the words of the scripture today. Because in our practice with attachment, somebody that's possessed by demons has pre-verbal trauma, and they need love and integration. And as you told the story again, it was really wonderful that this person crying out is actually getting Jesus's attention. And in therapy, that would be something that happened to a person, a trauma or a series of traumas, and we help them connect from that moment until now. And when we're sitting with a friend, we're not trying to do therapy. We're staying grounded and we're connected to our own resources. and we want to dwell with their pain. And this is my, opinion, right? And then once we're dwelling with their pain and we know where they're at, we're reflecting so they know that we're hearing where they're coming from. And then we're coming back to our own groundedness. We're coming back to breath and awareness of God, and remembrance that they're in a sacred place here with us and we're safe. And so there's particular things that we can say, but what's funny all the time to remember is that the person sitting across from you is saying what needs to be said. So if you don't have to fix them, you don't have to come up with some fabulous thing to say. But that said, there are some fabulous things to say, and I'm having my lovely assistant share that with you. And if you're my Facebook friend, I wrote it on Facebook earlier too. But you're telling somebody we'll get through this together. And you don't have to know how it's going to happen. You don't have to be driving the big boat that is God, right? You just have to remember, like, God's got the biggest boat. So somebody's coming at you with this huge wave of demon possession, and it's like, that's a referral to therapy, right? And somebody with openings. Unfortunately, I don't have any, and not many people I know have them right now, because we're going through so much. And when this is happening, there's a thing that happens in our brain. I don't know if you guys found the miracle Kacey performed this morning, where she got you a free gift under your seat. If you reach under there, you got a brain model. Ta-da! And when we're freaking out, it's called flipping your lid. So you got a biochemical cutoff from your prefrontal cortex and you're in your limbic system. Your body's trying to help you. It's saying, hey, I know what to do here. There was a wonderful story from Snohomish County where a young woman about 16 was helping her dad fix their truck, and the jack failed and the truck fell on her dad. That 16-year-old woman lifted the damn truck off her dad. And that's what flipping your lid is for. If you're in battle, if the truck falls on your dad, it's going to fill you with adrenaline and cortisol. So you're not going to feel the pain of when you're like rupturing discs in your spine as you're lifting the truck off of somebody, but you're going to lift the truck off somebody. And when we're overwhelmed, this whole thing fires off and we get cortisol and adrenaline. Everybody knows what this feels like. We're just calling it something today. You're biochemically cut off from your prefrontal cortex, which is where clear and creative thinking happen and where you can notice where you are right now. And then we get these black and white thinking, always and never kind of moments. You got to solve it right now. It's pressure to fix what's going on or help somebody. And then you got to blame something. It's the demons in you, or it's the trauma that happened. We want to know what happened so we can fix it. But like I said, kind of pop quiz, what's rule number one? We're not fixing anything. We're connecting. And so we got to know that fixing is above our pay grade, and we got to meet the person where they're at and make sure that they know that they're safe and we're here together, and it's not all their fault, because if it was all your fault, you would be God. And so that's kind of a different type of screwing up, right? So we're just coming back to the present. We're there with their pain, and it could be really scary. It's a big wave, and we're coming back here. We're saying we're okay, and we're saying you're safe. And some people that are the most hurt will say, no, I'm not. Every time you say you're safe, they'll say, no, I'm not. And so you want to reflect and validate. They do not feel safe. And so maybe they don't want to talk about it right now. Maybe they just want to take a walk or make some cookies. I get really lost in all the snacks we could have personally. But you want to distract. You want to do something else. So you're meeting a person, then you're coming back. And there's some great little practices you can do. Just stretch your neck. I invite you to try it right now. Look to the left, pick an object and a color. Look straight ahead, pick an object and a color. Look to the right, pick an object and a color. You haven't fixed anything. You haven't cured anything. but that's going to start getting your prefrontal cortex back online. You can also take a really big breath in as fast as you can, and then breathe out as slow as you can. And if you do that 3 times, it activates your vagus nerve, starts to bring you back into the room. If you give yourself a little face massage around the orbital nerves or around your mouth, the ingestion nerves, your neck, that's where the vagus nerve primarily is throughout the whole body. But any of that touch, that tells you that, hey, you're feeling that right now. You're okay. You're here in the room. And that's authority too. We are right here. And so a person that you're with and your own self, right? We can go off away from here now as many times as we want. And in some ways you could call that sinning. You're missing the mark. Or if I'm a therapist, I'm screwing up, right? And I got some great clients. They'll be like, Justus, you really suck at this right now. And I'll be like, oh, right, you're totally right. I'm talking too much, right? And bring it back, and you still got your breathing. And then at the end of the day, after I've worked with somebody for quite a while, I'll kind of razz them a little bit and say like, hey, you know who I am. Don't get swept away by all this stuff that I'm spouting at you. It's a fire hose. I do this stuff in like 45 minutes to an hour in the first session, and people walk out like, and so I try and bring it down and give it slower. But it's exciting to me because some of these basic things can just really help you heal yourself. You'll see that you're already doing a lot of this stuff. It's natural. And the final thing I wanted to share was just knowing your own window of tolerance. Are you overwhelmed by the thing that's coming at you? Do you need to take a break? And the way in which you taking a break and having boundaries is actually going to be healing for that other person. And then it's great for us therapists too, because you start with one person that has trauma. And if you're helping or trying to fix it, and you're talking to that person for an hour about their trauma, you're going to have what we call secondary trauma. So now we got 2 people that need therapy, and I still don't have any openings, you know? So we're not trying to fix it. We're trying to say we're okay, and we want to connect to resources. So when we're possessed with demons, let's cry out. And let's all show up. And, you know, if you're really having a hard time, like, we're going to find help for you. You don't have to do this yourself. And you're not the first person to experience that. One of my other really bad jokes is your problem is you think you're special. Like, it's the first time this horrible stuff has ever happened. And anybody's story, when you get your story, you make sense. You get the whole story and you go through it enough and you got something like, oh yeah, you would be screaming at Jesus too if that stuff happened to you. And isn't it wonderful that the guy was screaming at Jesus? Because then Jesus comes over, and I could probably help you, but it'd take me like 4 or 5 years to get, you know, the demons integrated. It's actually baby trauma, if you believe. I told Kacey I wasn't going to go there, but I did anyway. But Jesus walks up there, right? And he's got that authority. He's like, boom, here it is. And that, you know, that's Christ. That is like the whole community, the power of God. And let's not expect ourselves to do all that. Let's be doing this wonderful togetherness thing. And so just really wonderful. I appreciate you inviting me, Kacey. And I was telling I got to write a book about this. That was supposed to be 5 minutes, and I don't know how long I talked for. But that's some of what I've gotten from therapy.